What's up, friends? Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and create thriving communities. Enjoy this next episode. Hey, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Web3 Academy podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive that we all have to do at least once, and that is a deep dive into the Web3 rabbit hole. We were thinking at Web3 Academy, and everyone has to go down this rabbit hole at some point, but man, it's confusing. It's a tough rabbit hole to go down because there's just not a lot of consistent information out there. And so we decided we were going to help our community and the rest of the Web3 community and those that are new to the Web3 community go down the rabbit hole. That is why I wrote this article. That is why I'm reading this article to you today on the podcast. It's also why we just created and launched the Web3 Rabbit Hole course. This is a free course for all of our newsletter subscribers. And if you're not yet a newsletter subscriber, you can easily do so. Just head to our website, w3academy.io, and you subscribe, and it's right in there in the site. As a subscriber, you get access. And it is basically a 3-part series where it teaches you the foundations of Web3. So like, what is the space actually doing? What does it all mean? And where is it going? We break down the technology of Web3, so blockchain and what you need to know about that. And then we talk about the app layer and the future adoption of this space and how that may play out and how we think that will look. This is, I think, really important if you are looking to invest in the space, but more importantly, if you're looking to build or create or work inside of this space. So I highly recommend everyone does it. It's a really cool course. Take you about an hour to do. And what's really cool is you get to mint an NFT at the end to prove your completion. So once you finish the course, there's an option to mint an NFT, and it's sort of your verified or your certificate of completion via an NFT. And that will give you some access and some super cool things in the future, whether that's with Web3 Academy or just in general in the Web3 ecosystem. So I highly recommend you take that course, but I'm going to do kind of a summary of it here in this podcast and in the article that you can see inside the show notes as well. And this podcast, this article is titled, "Let's Go Down the Web3 Rabbit Hole Together." So if you're like most people in Web3, you spent some time going down the Web3 rabbit hole. We all go down it for different reasons. Maybe you want to understand what you just invested in, what money really is, how blockchain technology actually works, why a cartoon ape has value, or what industries will likely be disrupted the most from this innovation. Regardless, down the rabbit hole we go. I, for one, spent many weekends glued to my computer, reading articles, watching videos, listening to podcasts. To be honest, I'm still doing this daily and a little unsure if the rabbit hole ever really ends. I really don't think it does, guys. But I assume that you, just like me, are still in the Web3 rabbit hole because the idea of Web3, its underlying technology and what it means for humanity is extremely complex and challenging to comprehend in its entirety. It's disrupting and solving problems in many different ways for many different people. For example, Web3 means something completely different to a Ukrainian who fled their country due to the war than it does to a tech founder in Silicon Valley building a new social platform, or an Argentinian fighting 50+% inflation of their local currency. One thing we do know for sure is that Web3 is aiming to solve a lot of problems in this world. But I think this is where all the confusion comes from because people think it is so many different things than what it is. Everyone will inevitably fall down the Web3 rabbit hole, just like everybody fell down the internet rabbit hole in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Some got there earlier, others got there later, but we all went there eventually. And now here we are. The issue, however, is that this industry is hella confusing. Right? On Twitter, everyone is debating what's wrong and what's right. On YouTube, everyone is shilling their bags, and Googling Web3 doesn't provide much help either, unfortunately. Web3 it's developing and changing so quickly, it's impossible for the average person to stay on top of it all. But more importantly, it's extremely difficult to simply understand the foundational components of Web3, to understand the things that we know for sure. The foundations of Web3 must be the starting point for everyone. Whether you plan to build, create, invest, or work in a space, these are the things you got to understand because everything else is built on top of that, right? It's a kind of understanding that the foundational components of the internet before it blossomed to what it is now, right? If you understood the foundations of the internet in 1995, you would have done really well, I'm sure. right? Those who put in the work early on and understood the internet would eventually plug into every personal computer and would allow for information to flow globally while enabling websites to be used as storefronts and marketing tools, enabling payments over the internet and so much more, right? Like think about what businesses you could have started or what you could have invested in or just how you could have been more involved in space if you understood that that was all coming, right? Or that that's how the internet was going to work. But for those who didn't really go down the rabbit hole properly, they didn't really get that until it was already in existence. So they missed it. So just like in the internet in its early days, Web3 isn't fully built out yet. It's very nascent in terms of the underlying technology, the UX and the adoption, but there are many foundational components which we know to be true in Web3 already, which can help anyone navigate this space. The challenge, however, is finding those truths within all the noise and the mayhem of crypto and Web3. Because this is a speculative asset, it's just on a whole nother level versus any other industry I think that we've ever seen. And so this article is going to summarize a few of the Web3 truths that we know today. But before we do, there's a better option of learning all of these things about Web3 that was just made available. And that is, of course, the Web3 Rabbit Hole course that I just spoke about. So I'm going to skip that section of the article here because you already know. And the link is in the show notes below. Go complete that course. It's an hour long and grab yourself your proof of education NFT. So how to navigate the Web3 rabbit hole. Whether you plan to build, create, invest, or work in Web3, there are a few things you should be trying to uncover on your journey down the rabbit hole. Now, I've separated them into 3 categories. There may be others, and I'm sure there's many other things that we want to learn. But to me, the big things is what is Web3 and how is this going to change the way that we use the internet, right? Really important to understand. So that's sort of the just overall understanding of Web3 and what the space is. Then number 2, what is required of blockchain technology to power Web3? Look, all of this space is going to be built on top of blockchain technology. That is what enables most of what we're doing here in Web3 in terms of digital ownership and all that. And so it is really, really important if you are building, creating, investing, even working to understand what is required of blockchains and how this, not necessarily how it works, but what is required of the technology and the properties here so that you can make sure that you are a part of the technologies that are going to be with us long-term, right? You don't want to be in the technologies like Terra Luna that go to zero, okay? If you're building on there, that would have been very bad. If you were investing in there, of course, it's very bad. If you were creating NFTs and things on there, also very bad. So we do want to understand that technology aspect. And then number 3, how will the application layer emerge in Web3? And by application layer, what I really mean here is the user experience, right? I'll talk more about what I mean by that, but how is this UX going to work in Web3? What is this really going to do for us? And how's that going to play out? And those to me are the 3 big things to understand. I'm not trying to predict what apps are going to do the best here and which ones are going to go to the moon and which ones are going to be the best investments. Like that's not what we're talking about here. But ultimately, we know Web3 is here for the long term. And we want to understand what are the long-term things that will stick with us in Web3. And if we can understand that, we can really get a key direction on where the space is going and where we should start to work or start to build or start to create or invest, right? I think that's very important. And if you understand these 3 things in depth, then you really are on the forefront of Web3 and well ahead of most others in the world. Even those people that are currently in the space or have been in this space for a while. So I'm going to provide a TLDR on each of these questions right here in this episode. So let's start here. What is Web3 and how will this change the way humans use the internet? Well, Web3 makes the internet more similar to the physical world, right? It does this by enabling 2 new features, digital ownership and interoperability. Okay, in the physical world, we can truly own things or assets without relying on custodians or trusted third parties. In my hands, I can hold physical cash and gold, right? In the real world, my identity, like my passport or my driver's license, my unique art, a letter that I write, anything that I'm creating or doing in the real world, I can actually hold it and truly own it. And no one can take that from me. And I can also take those things I own with me from one place to another, whether that be a different city, a store, an event, and I can do that without restriction or needing permission, right? Maybe we take that for granted in the physical world because in the digital world, that is not possible at all. In the internet we know today, it was not built with the functionality to hold or store digital things personally. Instead, companies had to fill that void by building their own databases and their own systems to store all the digital goods for us. So our money is stored in banks. Our content is stored on Facebook servers and Instagram servers and Twitters. Our profiles are stored on the same servers. Rewards are stored in air miles, right? In-game items are stored in, World of Warcraft or Call of Duty or whatever game you're playing. We don't own any of that stuff. And as a result, we don't have the functionality to take those digital goods with us to different locations on the internet. So what I mean by that is like different applications. Okay. Now money, it's a bit of a difficult thing to move money from one country to another or from one application to another, going from, let's say, PayPal to, I don't know, whatever, something else transfer wise, right? It's not easy, but those things are possible. But if we think of our profile on Instagram, I can't move that to Twitter. I can't move my content to Twitter. I can't move my followers to Twitter. I can't move my games from Call of Duty to whatever, World of Warcraft. I don't know. But it's just not possible. And there are two main concerns with these missing features that I've mentioned above, right? There's little to no, and the two main features, again, are digital ownership and interoperability. But what this means, and the concerns here, is that there's little to no value accrual to any of these digital goods, like there are in the physical world, right? Instead, the value accrues to the few companies which hold all of our digital things, right? There might be some value in my profile or in my content or in, art that I make on my computer, but it doesn't mean anything in the Web2 world, right? At all. But in the Web3 world, it does. And so number two, there's extreme risk of having your digital goods removed, altered, or taken from you. This is especially detrimental to internet entrepreneurs, to creators, and to businesses. You are basically at the whim of whatever platform you are building on. And, we have seen time and time again that tends to go wrong, right? It's a scary thing, but it happens, unfortunately. So Web3 really turns on the ability to personally own digitally goods and take them with you across the internet. It means that the value created on the internet can accrue to those users generating it rather than a few companies who once custodied it. This is huge, okay? I think the impacts here are massive. So that's the TLDR on that. Let's go into what is required of a blockchain technology to power Web3. I think that this is easily the topic that is the least understood by most people in crypto and Web3. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on this either, but I've definitely spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people, reading a lot, and trying to understand just where this space is actually going. And I believe this topic to be so confused because the people solving this problem are some of the smartest people in the world. Yet they're also some of the worst at simplifying and explaining their solutions. If you've ever read one of Vitalik's articles or heard him on a podcast, it's not easy to understand what the heck he's talking about. And he's not the only one. There are many other smart people building and developing this space. These people are technical geniuses, not communication experts. And so here's what I believe that you need to understand. For simplistic sake, a blockchain is essentially a database, just like the databases we store our money in at Wells Fargo or our profile and content in on Facebook, okay? The difference is that with blockchain, the database is not owned or controlled by a single entity like the examples above. It is instead owned by everyone who chooses to participate in that database, okay? And these databases, when I'm saying this, are in quotations for those of you not watching. Or seeing what I'm reading, because it's not actually a database, but you could think of it this way. But this database is also this blockchain is also completely open to anyone in the world to use without the need for permission. Okay, you don't have to go create some account that is owned by Facebook in order to use Facebook. You can just go use it, right? So as a result, no one can control or alter this database. Right? You can think of this like a source of truth for who owns what on the internet. Now, just because something is a blockchain does not mean it can't end up being controlled or altered, similar to the Wells Fargo or the Facebook databases, okay? Blockchains, it's a buzzword, and there are many blockchains now, but they require various decentralization and security properties to truly achieve the goal of Web3 and of what blockchains are supposed to do. If these blockchains do not have these things, they are literally no different than a centralized database that we have across Web 2. Not only that, they are worse, right? Because the blockchains are slow. They cost a lot of money. They require a very complex set of people and machines and things to run it. And so there really is no point in having centralized blockchains. They are useless. Okay, I will say that right now. There are many of them that we use right now, but they are useless in the long term because you might as well just have a normal database. You might as well not have a blockchain. Okay. Now, on the flip side, okay, these blockchains also require scalability features in order to be feasible for mainstream adoption and to enable most of the use cases required to have digital ownership and interoperability on the internet. So if these blockchains don't scale, we're no better off than we were in Web 2 either. So just a decentralized blockchain is not going to do it for us, right? It also has to be a scaled one. Otherwise, if we don't get either of these, it's not really going to work, right? Nothing really changes here. For Web 3, again, there are different categories of what we're doing. There is the non-state money like Bitcoin, right? That is a blockchain that doesn't need to scale necessarily. It can just do the thing that it's trying to do, and that's it. But if you want to run a social app on top of Bitcoin, it's not going to happen, right? Same with Ethereum mainnet. It's not going to happen. Same with almost any blockchain we have right now. It's not going to happen. We need them to be scalable as well as decentralized and secure. And so this is where the blockchain trilemma comes into play. And I've talked about this before, and you'll learn more about it in the course. But by nature, the more decentralized or secure something is, the less scalable or cheap it is, and vice versa. And this is also true of blockchains. But as an example, just think about the most secure vault in the world, right? They're probably deep in a mountain, somewhere far from where most people are, and are guarded by various doors, locks, and artillery, right? It's secure, but it's very costly and not at all scalable for the masses, right? So no single blockchain, at least right now, according to the most up-to-date research and of cryptographers and everything going on, is no single blockchain can achieve all the things we need to securely power Web3 to billions of users and trillions of transactions per day. This is the thing that I think people tend to miss. Yes, we can build blockchains right now, a single blockchain, which can probably scale our industry at the moment. But we only have a few million people actually using this stuff, right? We don't have billions of users and trillions of transactions. The purpose of Web3 is to reach the entire world. It's to be the next internet. And if you don't understand how big the internet is, literally billions of people on there doing trillions. I don't even know what the next thing after trillions is. I don't know what it is. But anyway, it's that kind of numbers is what we need to reach, right? So no single blockchain is ever going to do that. There's just no way, okay? Now, thankfully, cryptography, which is the science, if you want to call it that blockchains are built off of, it enables us to securely link blockchains together so that they can share properties with one another. And this is the sort of multi-chain thesis that we've heard a lot about in the last year, maybe two, as you know, adoption has picked up and we've realized, wow, we actually need more blockchains here. And so what this really means, though, what cryptography actually allows us to do is it means we can have maximally scalable blockchains, so cheap and fast blockchains, otherwise known as layer twos, which link in to maximally decentralized and secure blockchains, otherwise known as layer ones, allowing us to have the best of both worlds. It's safe to say that the future of Web3 is multi-chain, but not in the way that most people believe this to be in the mainstream. Most of the blockchains currently in existence do not solve for any of the trilemma mentioned above, okay? They are not maximally decentralized, nor are they maximally scalable. They are just somewhere in between. But it is the combination of L1s and L2s which maximize their specific properties that will enable the future of Web3. Anything in between will simply not be sufficient for the future internet. Now, which blockchains will achieve this? That's still up in the air. We don't know. But the required properties are very clear and must not be forgotten or confused. And I believe that they are a lot. There are a lot of blockchains out there right now, and a lot of people are very I don't know what you want to call it, but tribal about their blockchains. And people need to zoom out and understand that it doesn't matter what your blockchain can do right now. Really doesn't matter. Our industry is so small and so nascent. We need to make this work for billions of users and trillions of transactions at maximal decentralization. Otherwise, it's all for nothing. And most of the blockchains out there right now are not solving that problem. Okay. I really, really need people to understand this. There are some that have roadmaps to solve this. Ethereum is one of them. I am not an Ethereum maxi. I could care less which name brand of blockchain makes it into the future. I really don't care. What I do care about, though, is that we have secure and decentralized blockchains that can reach the billions of users. And right now, no blockchain in existence that we have can do this. And likely, and what we're seeing in the research so far, is that it's just not going to be possible because of the trilemma. Okay. But many of these blockchains can start to either adapt the layer 2 functionalities or turn into a layer 2 on a different layer 1. And that is the thing that we believe, most in the space believe, that are really digging into this, is the one thing that will enable us to scale to the size that we need while maintaining the properties of a blockchain of decentralization security. Okay. That is really important to understand. And again, I'm not going to name names because I don't know which ones are going to do this. All of the blockchains right now could end up building out this roadmap in the future. Avalanche is already beginning to do this. Ethereum, of course, is already doing this. Polkadot is sort of doing its own version of this through parachains. Cosmos has a sort of version to this as well. Like the way that this whole thing works, we're still not exactly sure. But there is a lot of understanding in that layer 2s plugging into layer 1s is going to be the future of this. And there will probably be more layers, right? And other blockchains that come out that can that will do this maybe better than ones currently. So again, I'm not choosing any blockchains here, but I just want you to understand that a single blockchain, if they don't have a what's called a modular approach to a blockchain rather than a monolithic approach, which is just one, you can bet that it's not going to make it long term because it's not going to be able to keep up, unless there may be blockchains which are just app specific and they just have a very, very niche need. But again, that's not going to power Web3. That's not going to be the thing that enables Web3 to do what it's going to do. So very important to understand that there. Okay, the third one is, how will the application layer or the user experience emerge in Web3? So if you've ever interacted with a blockchain, you know that the experience is not great, right? The same is true if you've interacted with the protocol layers of the internet, you know, TCP, IP, SMTP, etc. Everyone reading this right now uses the internet, or sorry, everyone listening to this also uses the internet. Yet most of you have never knowingly interacted with TCP, IP, and SMTP, right? Including myself. I have no idea what that stuff does, but I know it is the protocol layer of the internet, right? And that's because this stuff is the underlying foundational technology which enables many other use cases and technologies to be built on top of it, right? The users interact with the application layer, not the foundation layer. I interact with Twitter, right? And YouTube. I don't go on the internet because I want to use TCP and SMTP. I don't even know how to do that, right? But the same is true with blockchain. In fact, the only reason people right now interact with blockchains is because the features that blockchains enables is just so valuable that many of us don't care about this UX. We just want to use its features anyway, right? So when we think about how Web3 will emerge in the future, the first thing you need to understand is that it will look nothing like it does today. The application layer will be built over top of the blockchain layer in such a way that most people won't even know what blockchain they are using, or that they are even using a blockchain in the first place. Okay. I think that not very soon. I don't know how long it's going to take, probably years, but you have the option to use a blockchain. That's what's cool, because it's open, right? You have the option to do that if you choose to be very you don't want to use any application. But most people in the world, the billions of people in the world, they're going to use applications. Just like we use Instagram and Twitter on the internet, we don't use TCP. Okay. So that's the first thing I understand, is what you see in the UX now is not what this is going to be like, because we won't actually interact with blockchains. Now, by the way, this doesn't mean everything that I discussed in number 2 in terms of decentralization security doesn't matter, because it does. It's just that it matters to the builders of the application layer rather than the users of it. This is the thing that I often hear in the space is users don't care about decentralization. So who cares about decentralization? Like, if we don't have decentralization and security, this whole thing is for nothing. And the people that are building the applications on this, they want to build where there's good, safe real estate. They know it's going to be around for forever. And so it matters to the builders. The builders are right now the only things that matter in this space, right? Users don't come here if builders don't build cool things. So it's all about the builders. Anyway, a great example of this that we're already seeing play out is in decentralized finance, or DeFi. One of the first sectors which was enabled by blockchain was DeFi. And Bankless, who is another popular media company, they coined the term the DeFi mullet. Okay. And this is, the DeFi mullet is whereby the fancy design and great UX applications built by things like fintech companies will be the front-facing user interface, right? And that will be the easy thing that users can see and use. But in the back end, it'll all be powered by decentralized financial protocols built on top of decentralized blockchains. So if you can see the picture here, we have the fintech in the front and DeFi in the back. That's what's known as the DeFi mullet. Okay. That's been around for maybe a couple of years now and has become somewhat popular in the space. But I believe that this will be the case for all sectors of Web3, including social and gaming and metaverse, and even the various use cases around NFTs. And in fact, we're already starting to see this play out with Instagram just integrating NFTs on Ethereum into their application. From a user perspective, not only do you not even interact with the blockchain, they don't even use the word NFT. Rather, they're calling them digital collectibles, right? So just like the internet protocols today, most blockchain and protocol level technology will be tucked away underneath the application layer. Okay. So say goodbye to your blockchains and, take this for granted, be happy that you got to actually use blockchains. I mean, I don't know if you want to be happy because the experience is terrible, but this whole idea of, having to worry about gas and switching networks and doing all of these things, you're never going to have to think about that. Okay. Because it's going to all be tucked underneath the application layer, giving the world the incredible benefits of digital ownership and interoperability with sort of that smooth and simple UX of all of the beautiful Web2 applications that we know and love today. So that is kind of the idea of the application layer. I do go into a lot more detail inside the Web3, inside the Web3 Rabbit Hole course, where I give more examples and just sort of look at how this is all going to look out and play. So again, I highly recommend you go in and you take that course. It'll take you about an hour or so to do. And then don't forget, you get to claim your proof of education NFT after you complete that course, which will have some sort of benefits into the future. I can't tell you what. I don't even know what right now, but it will happen at some point in the future. So hopefully that helps you get started on your rabbit hole and understanding some of the foundational components of Web3. I thank you guys for listening. And if you have any questions or you want to refute something that I said, or you want to discuss it, just join our Discord community. And in the show notes below, you can find our link to get into the Discord. Join the Discord, but more importantly, join our Monday community call. So every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our community gets together and we discuss different subjects. It is either a subject about one of our latest podcasts that week, it is reviewing a protocol, or it is discussing about the future of this community, the Web3 Academy community. We are looking to activate our community further, to build out products and potentially build out a DAO. And we have frequent conversations about that in our community call with many of the members of the community that have been working on this and looking to build out resources and things to help the greater Web3 ecosystem. So if you want to get involved in the Web3 Academy community, then please join one of our calls or just join the Discord, and just reach out in the general chat. And if you happen to be around on Mondays at 7 p.m. EST, make sure to join one of our community calls there. You can see in the Discord on what the topic will be about. But we would love to have you inside of that. Well, friends, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Web3 Academy. We have a lot of really cool guests coming up on this show in the coming weeks, and just so excited to share some of this information with you. So please stay tuned. and continue to listen here at Web3 Academy. We are greatly appreciative of all of our listeners and subscribers. So all of you, I wish you a wonderful week. Thank you and all the best. Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you have yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.